1. The lie of the continuity of self. You woke up today, didn't you? You stretched, blinked, re-entered your skin, and assumed you were the same you that went to sleep. You think your selfhood traveled through the night uninterrupted. But how do you know? Let's begin with a question your brain doesn't want you to ask. What is the self? And who keeps it intact when you are gone? In 2010, neuroscientist Neil demonstrated how the brain hallucinates reality. The world you perceive is not the world as it is. It's a best guess, a controlled hallucination based on noisy inputs. And this doesn't stop at your senses. Your sense of I, the cohesive story of being you from one day to the next, is also a hallucination. It is a fragile narrative sewn together by memory, habit, and unconscious neural continuity. Remove just one of these threads and the entire illusion collapses. Think of Clive Waring, the man whose amnesia is so severe that his memory resets every 7 seconds. In that interval, he still uses the word I, still identifies with a self he cannot remember. I'm alive, he often declares. But what is that I? There is no continuity. There is no accumulation of selfhood. He is the most honest human being on earth, forever a fresh burst of consciousness screaming into the void. But you're no different. You only seem stable because your brain is skilled at stitching yesterday to today. The brain fills in blanks automatically, blind spots in your eyes, gaps in your hearing, discontinuities in your memory. The same way it makes you feel like the world is still behind your head when you're not looking, it makes you feel like you're the same person you were at 5, 15, or even 5 minutes ago. But the self is not a thing. It is a simulation. Split-brain patients prove this with unnerving clarity. After severing the corpus callosum, the bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain, patients functioned outwardly as normal. But when one hemisphere was shown an image and asked to respond, the other hemisphere couldn't explain why it reacted that way. One person, two minds, each thinking it was the whole. Where's your self, then? In your left hemisphere? You're right. Is your self a product of coherence, or simply the one doing the talking? Consider the ship of Theseus. If every plank is replaced over time, is it still the same ship? Now apply that to you. Every cell in your body is replaced on a schedule. Your brain's synaptic connections are constantly restructured. Memories are rewritten each time they are retrieved. You are a story told by electricity to meet one that is updated every time you recall it. So if the story changes, who exactly is remembering? Psychologist Bruce Hood calls this the illusion of the self. There is no central CEO in your mind, no hidden eye behind the eyes, just modules, vision, movement, speech, memory, each operating semi-independently, coordinated by a loose confederation of neurons and experience. When you say, I want, which part of you wants? When you say, I believe, which subsystem casts a vote? Your brain manufactures a first-person perspective from fragments, like an author writing a book without reading the previous chapters. That feeling of being someone is not evidence of continuity. It is the final byproduct of the machine's moment-to-moment integration of chaos. You believe in memory, but memory is corrupt. Studies by Elizabeth Loftus show how memories can be implanted, distorted, rewritten without you ever knowing. You can believe, fervently, that something happened, even when it did not. So what is your self, if built on a scaffold of false recollection? You believe in emotion, but emotion is prediction. Your body guesses how to feel based on past models. You are not reacting to the present. You are simulating what you think should be happening. And that simulation becomes feeling. You feel sad because you predict that you should. You feel angry because the body remembers a template. Your self is a puppet pulled by wires from events long buried. Even your preferences are unstable. In a 2011 study on choice blindness, participants picked faces they found more attractive. When secretly shown the opposite face later and asked to explain their choice, most didn't notice the swap and confidently justified a decision they never made. The self that reasons, the self that chooses, is retroactive. Your mind makes decisions first and builds justifications later. You are the ghostwriter of your own life. and you still believe you are the same person who woke up this morning. You're not even conscious most of the time. Your waking hours are a haze of default mode processing, daydreams, procedural tasks, and reflexive loops. The conscious you, the one reading this, occupies a tiny percentage of your mental bandwidth. The rest is unconscious filtration, suppression, noise reduction. You are the last to know your own thoughts, the first to pretend you invented them. Philosopher Derek Parfit once argued, "There is no deep further fact about identity over time." In other words, there is no real you connecting the past to the present, just a succession of mind moments, loosely linked by habits, sensory data, and belief. And belief is just noise that congealed. So when you fall asleep, what survives? Your body remains, but your sense of self evaporates. You descend into unconsciousness, where time is meaningless, where you do not remember being alive. And when you dream, your brain fabricates a temporary you, a shadow self that forgets its waking life, invents new rules, new logic, and new pasts. And yet you feel real inside it. Just like now, you wake up and assume continuity. But that assumption is not proof. It is ritual. In ancient times, the Greeks believed sleep was a cousin of death. They were right. Sleep is death with a heartbeat. You only think you survive it because your story resumes. But that story is not authored by you. It is reconstructed, not remembered. The person who dreams is not you. The person who wakes is not the one who slept. There is no thread. There is no core. There is no self. Only the echo of one. And if the you who began reading this has already been replaced by the time we reach the end. 2. The invention of time. How your brain fabricates yesterday. Time is not something you move through. It is something your brain invents to keep you sane. You think you experience it. You don't. You infer it. You live inside a model. Your neurons are blind to time itself. They only sense change. But the mind craves order. So it turns flux into sequence, rhythm into narrative. Like a magician forcing a card, your brain gives you the illusion of linearity, past, present, future, forward motion. But that motion is not real. It is imposed. Einstein called time an illusion, albeit a persistent one. In 1905, he shattered the idea of simultaneity. What is now for you might be later for someone else. The speed at which you move, the gravity you feel, these distort your experience of time. In the language of relativity, now is subjective. There is no universal moment. There never has been. But your brain refuses this truth, because it cannot operate without the fiction. The hippocampus, the seat of memory, does not record time. It reconstructs it. It guesses when things happen based on context, association, and emotional charge. You don't recall your life as it occurred. You recall fragments stitched together by stories you tell yourself. Stories designed not to be accurate, but coherent. This is why a trauma can feel closer than a joy from yesterday. Because the mind respects emotion, not chronology. Studies by Carl Friston and the predictive coding model show that the brain doesn't wait for the world. It predicts what will happen next and fills in the gaps based on expectation. You're living milliseconds ahead of yourself. You're hallucinating the present based on what you expected it to be. In other words, you never truly see now. What happens when those predictions are wrong? Déjà vu. That eerie moment where the present feels like the past, though logically impossible. It is not magic. It is a glitch, a delay in processing, a mistaken memory trace. Your brain flags the now as already known because the input hit the wrong circuit. And for a moment, you see the lie, the seam. You see that time is fragile, recyclable, fabricated. Now consider the chronesthesia theory, your ability to mentally time travel, to imagine yourself in the future or the past. This feature, once believed unique to humans, lets you simulate outcomes, but also traps you. It makes you believe that the past was real and the future will be real. Even though both are abstractions, imagined with the same mechanism used to dream. The past is not stored. The future is not seen. Both are hallucinations, and yet they rule your life. Think about this. Every moment you call a memory is happening now, inside your brain's firing neurons. There is no portal to the past, only a shadow play on the wall of the skull. You believe you remember, but really, you are constructing, sculpting meaning from patterns, rehearsing identity with each retelling. And still you trust the calendar. Historically, timekeeping is arbitrary. The week, a 7-day invention from Babylon, tied to lunar cycles and superstition. The hour, a division imposed by ancient Egypt, rooted in astrology, not biology. The Gregorian calendar itself is a 16th century correction to a flawed solar guess. Time, as you measure it, is the consequence of agriculture, politics, religion, not science. And what about aging? Your body decays not by some ticking cosmic clock, but by entropy, randomness increasing in a closed system. But entropy is not time. It is disorder. Time is how you explain the direction of that disorder. But direction is an illusion born of memory. If you had no memory, would the arrow of time even exist? Now consider the universe. The laws of physics are time-symmetric. Run them backward and they still work. There is no fundamental reason things must move forward. The past and future are mathematically interchangeable, except we feel otherwise. We suffer, we dread, we age, but that is not reality. That is us. Sean Carroll, physicist, calls this the past hypothesis, the idea that the universe began in a state of extraordinarily low entropy, and that's why we perceive time flowing in one direction. But no one knows why the initial conditions were that way. Why was everything ordered? Why did disorder follow? Maybe we don't move through time. Maybe time is static, and we're the ones who flicker. Julian Barber posits a terrifying idea. That time does not exist at all. That the universe is a vast configuration space, a library of all possible nows, and what you call motion is simply your mind stringing still frames into a narrative. Like a flipbook, you don't move. You are reinstantiated, moment to moment, and the feeling of passage is just another hallucination. You're not in time. You are time's excuse for movement. And sleep, what is sleep? A blackout, a collapse of continuity. You fall asleep at 11 p.m., wake at 7 a.m., and pretend those 8 hours happened. But to you, they didn't. There was no time, just a jump cut between scenes. And that is how your life proceeds. One frame to the next, with no proof of causality. Only belief, only assumption. You believe yesterday caused today because your brain says so. But the evidence? There is none. Every new moment is total, self-contained. The bridge between them is fiction. You never truly know what came before. You only know what your neurons tell you to believe. And if every second is a reconstruction, a hallucinated narrative pasted over static frames of existence, then time does not pass. You do. So ask yourself now, if time is not real, and memory is an invention, and the present is always guessed. 3. The brain in the darkness. You have never touched the world. There is no sunlight in your brain, no color, no sound, no scent, no texture, no language. Inside your skull, there is only silence and darkness and electrical fire. The world you think you live in, this glowing, humming, vibrating place of warmth and cold and human connection. You've never touched it. Not once. Not directly. Because the only thing you've ever truly experienced is your brain's guess about what's out there. From the moment you were born, your nervous system has been sealed inside your body like a prisoner in solitary confinement. It receives signals, tiny electrical impulses from the eyes, ears, skin, nose, and tongue. But these signals are meaningless until interpreted. They're not sights, not sounds, not feelings. They are raw data, spikes of voltage. And your brain, desperate to make sense of the void, spins those meaningless signals into experience. Let's take vision. You think you see with your eyes. You don't. You see with your brain. The eyes are just transducers, devices that convert photons into neural signals. But photons carry no color. Red doesn't exist. Color is not a property of light. It is a property of perception. Your brain adds it after the fact. What you see is not what's there. It's what your brain expects to be there. You have a blind spot in each eye, where the optic nerve connects to the retina. No photoreceptors. You don't see a black dot, though. Your brain fills it in with surrounding patterns. It lies to you so you won't panic. That's the trick. You're hallucinating all the time. You just call it reality. Anil Seth puts it plainly. Perception is a controlled hallucination. When it breaks, we call it psychosis. When it works, we call it the world. And touch. You think you've held another person's hand? Press your palm against theirs? You haven't. Electromagnetic repulsion keeps atoms from overlapping. No matter how tightly you embrace, your atoms never actually make contact. What you feel is the force, not the object. What you interpret as closeness is a negotiation of charge. The same goes for hearing. Sound is not in the air. It is pressure waves that your ears convert into electrical signals. The sound itself, the feeling of a voice, the pitch of music, exists only in your mind. And that music, like everything else, is delayed. It takes milliseconds to reach you. You live slightly behind the moment, always reacting to the past, never catching up to the now. How can you be certain that what you experience is what others experience? The inverted spectrum problem. What if your red is my blue? What if what you feel is pain, I would feel as pleasure, but we both use the same word? There's no test for this. No way to compare qualia, the raw feel of experience. You're trapped inside your own mind with no exit. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked, what is it like to be a bat? Not in terms of behavior, but experience. The answer is, we'll never know. Even if we mapped every neuron in the bat's brain, we couldn't recreate its subjective world. Because consciousness is not input or output. It is interpretation. And interpretation is inaccessible. Now ask yourself, what is it like to be you? Do you even know? Consider the rubber hand illusion. A subject's real hand is hidden, and a rubber hand is placed in view. Both the rubber hand and the hidden real hand are stroked simultaneously. After minutes, the subject begins to feel the rubber hand as their own. They flinch when it's threatened. The brain rewires its sense of body ownership that quickly. What else do you believe is you, simply because it fits a pattern? Take phantom limb syndrome. Amputees feel pain in limbs that no longer exist. The brain still believes the limb is there because it expects it. Or mirror therapy, where showing a reflection of the intact hand can relieve the pain in the missing one. The brain doesn't need the body. It needs coherence. Your sense of being a body, of having a border, a self, is fragile. Dissociative episodes, out-of-body experiences, near-death hallucinations. These are not spiritual events. They are brain failures. When the temporoparietal junction malfunctions, you can feel as though you're floating above yourself, watching your own body as an object. The brain dislocates the self, and you believe it. This is not supernatural. This is your default hardware. The truth is, you don't exist in the world. The world exists in you. All the cities, all the faces, all the pain and beauty you've known, all of it is a simulation rendered by 86 billion neurons trying to guess what lies beyond the bone cage of your skull. And if those neurons malfunction, if dopamine levels shift, if serotonin dips, the world warps. Colors fade, faces distort, meaning dissolves. Reality depends on balance, on chemistry, on luck. And you believe that your mind reflects the world. But maybe the world reflects your mind. When you are calm, it is peaceful. When you are afraid, it becomes threatening. When you're broken, it collapses. You think you're interpreting the world, but maybe you're projecting it. So what is real, then? You say, it's what we agree on. But agreement is just consensus hallucination. We share language, but not experience. We nod together in the dark, pretending we see the same stars. You say, reality is what doesn't go away when you stop believing in it. But try telling that to someone with schizophrenia, or someone in REM sleep, or someone whose entire personality disintegrates from a brain injury. Their world is real to them, no less than yours. So tell me, if you've never actually touched the world, if your eyes are hallucinating shapes your brain invented, if your ears are translating air into feeling, if your skin has never brushed another human soul, What proof do you have that anything outside your mind has ever truly existed? 4. You've never made a single choice. You like to believe you're in control, that your life is a long series of choices, some smart, some flawed, but all yours. You believe in free will, in agency, in the power to decide. You believe your preferences come from within, that you steer this vessel you call me. But you never chose your birth. You never chose your genes. You never chose your environment, your parents, your language, your brain chemistry. By the time you had your first thought, you were already programmed. Everything after that has been a reaction. In 2008, neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes used fMRI scans to show that your brain decides before you do. In his study, participants were told to press a button with their left or right hand. They thought they chose freely, but the brain's motor cortex showed activity related to their decision up to 7 seconds before they were aware of it. The choice was made in silence, in the dark, long before the illusion of I decide kicked in. You are not the author. You are the narrator, catching up to the story being written in your name. And the story was rigged from the beginning. Your so-called preferences? Conditioned responses. You like chocolate because of cultural exposure, childhood reward associations, and inherited taste receptors. You like certain people because their face symmetry matches an internal template formed from years of social and genetic coding. You feel right about some decisions not because they're rational, but because they align with subconscious emotional triggers your mind never consulted you about. Think of Benjamin Libet's famous experiments. Participants flicked their wrist at will and reported the moment they decided to act. Yet EEG scans showed neural readiness before that conscious decision. Your sense of willing is a post hoc narrative, the brain acting and the mind explaining after the fact. You think you're choosing. You're just witnessing decisions being revealed to you. The philosopher Daniel Dennett tries to say free will by calling it a user illusion, a functional trick. You feel like you have control, and that feeling helps society run. But feeling is not proof. And if your belief in free will is a useful lie, then what else do you cling to just because it keeps the wheels spinning? Let's go deeper. Imagine a man who commits a murder. We rush to judge him. He could have chosen otherwise. But what if his amygdala is damaged? What if his impulse control is impaired from trauma? What if he was raised in violence, deprived of affection, flooded with cortisol since age 3? At what point do you blame him, and not the thousand silent forces that shaped him? Now apply that to yourself. You think you made that decision to leave, to stay, to say yes, to say no. But where was your control in the neurotransmitters that swayed your gut? In the cultural scripts that told you what was appropriate? In the moment your stomach turned and you called it instinct? Even your morality is inherited. You feel disgust at some acts, but disgust is a reflex, not a verdict. The same act that revolts one culture is sacred in another. Morality is biology dressed in costume. Sam Harris puts it bluntly. You can do what you decide to do, but you cannot decide what you decide. The next thought that enters your mind. Will you have chosen it? Try. Wait for your next thought. Did you summon it? Or did it arrive, uninvited, from a place you cannot see? If thoughts arise on their own, and actions follow thoughts, then the chain of events was never yours. You're surfing a wave you didn't create, paddling through choices already made, pretending you have a paddle at all. And the worst part? You need to believe it. You need the illusion of control to survive. People who lose this illusion spiral into paralysis. The brain protects you by lying. Now consider split brain patients again. When the left hemisphere is shown a command, walk, the patient gets up. When asked why, the speaking hemisphere, which didn't see the command, says, I'm going to get a Coke. It invents a reason. The brain demands a story, even when it's false. So what about your life story? Your regrets, your triumphs, the decisions that made you who you are? They're editorial rewrites, justifications for neural dominoes falling in a line. The illusion is elegant. It gives meaning to chaos, but it's still fiction. Even love is not chosen. Attraction is a cocktail of facial symmetry, hormone compatibility, pheromones, voice pitch, and behavior patterns shaped by millions of years of selection. You fall in love the way a moth falls toward light. blindly. You stay in love the way a brain craves dopamine, habitually, and yet you call it your decision. Tell me then, when exactly did you choose to be who you are? Was it when your brain developed in utero? When your parents yelled? When the trauma etched itself into your limbic system? When your reward centers lit up from approval? When the culture taught you shame? Where in all that noise do you begin? And if the self is a puppet pulled by strings you cannot trace? If your choices are echoes of machinery you don't command? If your life is a river and you are foam on its surface? What makes you believe you've ever done anything at all? 5. The history you believe was never real. The past is a story told by survivors. And survivors lie. You've spent your life believing that history is a record of what happened. A chronology of progress, wars, inventions, eras, kings and queens, slaves and revolutions. You were taught that it's all written down, cataloged, understood. But history is not memory. It is mythology wrapped in scholarship. It is what the victors were able to write. You believe in facts, but facts require witnesses, records, evidence. And all evidence is filtered through flawed humans, crumbling texts, political agendas, and decaying matter. You believe the past happened a certain way because people said it did. But you don't know. You can't know. How much of what you think happened actually happened? Let's begin with the simplest illusion: dates. The calendar you live by, the Gregorian calendar, was adopted in 1582, correcting a 10-day drift in the Julian calendar. But not everyone switched at once. In fact, some countries lag by centuries. Russia didn't adopt it until 1918. What day is it? Depends who you ask. Depend when you ask. Time itself was retrofitted. Whole years have vanished. The phantom time hypothesis, proposed by Heribert Illig, suggests that 297 years of European history, AD 614 to 911, may have been fabricated to legitimize the reign of Holy Roman Emperor Otto III. Is this fringe? Perhaps, but no one can disprove it. Archaeological layers don't match historical records. Buildings predate their invention. Documents contradict each other. Even if it's wrong, the terrifying truth remains. You can't verify the past. And when records disagree, which version survives? The one with power. Consider the Library of Alexandria, a vast storehouse of ancient knowledge, burned and pillaged multiple times across centuries. We do not know what was lost. Mathematics? Astronomy? Proofs of alternate histories? Entire civilizations may have existed and been forgotten, not because they were wrong, but because they were defeated. What you call human history is what wasn't erased. Langvagesti. Cultures are assimilated. Oral traditions vanish. And with them, whole timelines vanish too. What if the first humans had civilizations before the ones we now claim were first? Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built 11,000 years ago, predates agriculture and writing. It shouldn't exist. Yet it does. A temple from the deep fog of prehistory. Who built it? No one knows. What culture did it serve? No record. So it's labeled a mystery, then set aside. Science writes progress as linear. But history is a graveyard of nonlinear collapse. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek device used to predict astronomical positions, was discovered in a shipwreck. It's 2,000 years old. It's essentially an analog computer. For over a century, it sat misunderstood. Had we not found it, we would still believe such technology was impossible for the ancients. Its existence rewrote nothing. It was filed away as an anomaly. So how many anomalies are you ignoring? Historical truth is curated, sanitized, rewritten. In the 20th century alone, Soviet Russia airbrushed political enemies from photographs. They vanished from history, not by dying, but by being deleted. The past became flexible. That wasn't unique. American textbooks altered depictions of slavery. Japanese accounts minimized wartime atrocities. Entire generations were educated in selective fiction. What if that's still happening? Memory is fallible, but collective memory, national memory, is a weapon. George Orwell knew this. In 1984, he wrote, "Who controls the past controls the future." Who controls the present controls the past. This wasn't prophecy. It was description. And even when records remain, they are incomplete. Ancient texts are fragmented. Translations distort nuance. Some languages cannot be deciphered. The Indus Valley Script, the linear A tablets, thousands of messages from dead civilizations, permanently locked behind a lost code. Ask yourself, how do you know Julius Caesar lived? Or Jesus? Or Socrates? You've never seen them. You've never read their original words. You rely on copies of interpretations. Centuries removed, filtered through ideology, faith, politics. Socrates never wrote anything. What you know of him is Plato's construction, a puppet for his philosophy. Your education was built on these shadows. And then there's memory on the individual scale. The Mandela effect. Thousands of people recall Nelson Mandela dying in prison. They recall vivid details, news reports, funerals, speeches. They are wrong, but they are convinced. They are not crazy. They are remembering a past that never happened. False memory is not a glitch. It is the rule. Elizabeth Loftus showed how easy it is to implant memories. Tell someone they got lost in a mall as a child. Show them a doctored photo. Ask them to describe the event. Most will, in detail, with emotion. It becomes their truth. Now zoom out. What happens when a nation remembers falsely? Do you think your history books are immune? That your patriotic myths are untouched? That the stories that define your identity, your tribe, your heroes, your suffering, are all accurate? And even if they were, so what? The past is gone. Forever. You can't go back. You can't test it. You can't see it. It exists now only in minds, and minds are corruptible. So what, exactly, do you think you're standing on? A timeline? A civilization? A legacy? Or is it all just pages of a book someone else already wrote? A book that could be burned, rewritten, misprinted, or forgotten. And if history itself is unknowable, how can you be certain that anything you believe ever truly happened? 6. The body is not yours. You speak of your body as if it belongs to you. My arms, my brain, my face. But who is the you who possesses it? And why do you assume ownership over a machine you don't understand, don't control, and didn't design? You are a passenger in a meat suit stitched together by blind biology. Not the driver. Never the driver. Take your heartbeat. It beats without your permission. You cannot stop it with thought. You cannot change its rhythm through willpower alone. The same applies to digestion, immune response, pupil dilation, hormonal fluctuation. You say, I have a body, but you cannot control the vast majority of what it does. It breeds you, it moves you, it decays you. The truth is this: your body is not your tool. It is your habitat. You live inside like a parasite lives inside a host. Except you are the part that can speak, the part that narrates. And even that speech, thought, desire is driven by chemical imperatives you did not authorize. The gut has more neurons than the spinal cord. It produces 90% of your serotonin. Your second brain, the enteric nervous system, operates independently. It controls your cravings, your moods, your behaviors. It can send distress to your brain without your brain understanding why. So who's in charge? You don't even perceive your body accurately. Your mind builds a map, a phantom outline, and can be tricked. The rubber hand illusion, again, or the full body swap illusions used in virtual reality studies, where your sense of embodiment shifts with just a first-person camera feed and synchronized touch. Suddenly, you are not you. You are a stranger, and you believe it. Because the body is not real. It is interpreted. You don't see your body. You see a filtered reconstruction inside your mind. You don't feel your hand. You feel signals interpreted by your brain as your hand. When those signals are removed, amputated limbs, spinal injuries, the body map remains. You feel ghost limbs. You feel pain in flesh that no longer exists. Where does your body go then? It never belonged to you in the first place. It belonged to DNA, a 4-letter code etched into molecules before you had a name, before you had a thought, before your parents met. That code told your bones where to grow. It told your skin what shade to be. It dictated your height, your facial symmetry, your metabolic rate, your hormonal profile. Every choice you think you've made with your body, what you eat, how you dress, how you move, was shaped by genetics, culture, and feedback loops. You didn't choose your sex drive. You didn't choose your appetite. You didn't choose the parts of your body you feel ashamed of or proud of. Those feelings were installed like software. And now you run the program without question. The philosopher Michel Foucault argued that the body is disciplined by society. That what you feel about your own skin is a result of external forces, surveillance, judgment, normalization. Your body is policed, not by you, but by the invisible architecture of culture. You behave because you're watched. You conform because it hurts not to, and so your body becomes a performance. Smile. Sit straight. Hide your flaws. Decorate yourself with status symbols. Starve yourself. Stuff yourself. Work out. Give up. You think these are your decisions, but they are reactions. A cycle of reward and punishment driven by systems you didn't build. Your body is a product, engineered by nature, modified by nurture, marketed by capitalism. And somewhere in all of that, you're supposed to call it home. But does a home ignore you? You get sick without asking for it. Cancer grows. Neuroscience. Skin mutates. Your immune system can turn against you. Your own cells can decide you're the enemy. Autoimmune disorders. Psychosomatic disorders. Your body attacking the ghost inside it. And what about trauma? Do you think pain only lives in the mind? It lives in the tissues. The nervous system remembers. Complex PTSD shows that years after a trauma, the body still reacts. The heart races. Muscles tense. Hormones flood. Long after the conscious memory fades, the body continues screaming. Like a dog trained to flinch at a shadow. Even death refuses to be clean. After clinical death, cells in your body continue functioning for hours. Gene expression continues. Skin cells divide. Stem cells survive. Your body doesn't die all at once. It dies in stages, like a ship breaking apart under pressure. You don't even get the dignity of a clean exit. And yet you say, "This is me," but you're not your body. You are a story trapped in a decaying machine. And the machine does not ask what the story wants. It breaks on its own timeline. It hungers on its own schedule. It bleeds, swells, decays without permission. It was never built to care about your meaning. So if you do not own your organs, if your senses lie, if your emotions rise from your intestines, if your pain lingers beyond memory, if your flesh answers to no voice, who is this you still pretending to live inside? 7. Sleep is the practice of dying. You die every night, but your brain makes sure you forget. Sleep feels harmless because it's routine. You lie down, fade out, wake up. But this illusion of continuity masks the truth. Sleep is the only death you accept without fear. What you call sleep is the repeated surrender of self. Consciousness unplugs. Memory stops recording. The I disappears. And in that disappearance, your mind practices what it cannot understand. Not being. The psychologist Thomas Metzinger writes, "Nobody has ever been, or had, their own waking self in a dream." Think about that. When you dream, you don't question who you are. You accept it, even when your body is different, even when the world makes no sense. Because your sense of self is contextual, not eternal. Your identity is a shape your brain carves to fit the current environment. So what happens when that environment is pure chaos? In REM sleep, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, decision-making, identity, goes dark. You become passive, absurd, vulnerable. You dream of impossible things. You witness horrors, transformations, euphorias, and contradictions. You often don't know you're dreaming. And when you wake, you forget most of it within minutes. Like it never happened. But it did happen. It was a version of you. A disposable version. How many versions have already been discarded? Sleep fragments the illusion of a continuous self. Every night, your brain performs a hard reset. Brainwaves shift. Neuromodulators like serotonin and norepinephrine drop. Memory consolidation begins, but not as you think. Memories are not saved like files. They are restructured, altered, sometimes erased. Sleep edits your identity. You wake up feeling like yourself. but you are a post-dream reconstruction, a version that survived the purge. Ask yourself, if someone wiped your memories while you slept and you woke with a new set, would you notice? The philosopher John Locke posed a similar question centuries ago. If a prince and a cobbler swapped memories overnight, who is who? Is identity the body or the memory? But what if memory itself is false, and the body, a decaying vessel with no voice? Sleep is not one thing. It is a cycle. You descend through hypnagogic states in a stage 1, stage 2, deep slow-wave sleep, then REM. Each has its own rhythm, its own disruption. Night terrors happen in deep sleep, often without memory. Sleep paralysis strikes between REM and wakefulness, a terrifying state in which the mind is conscious but the body is frozen. People report demons, suffocation, evil presences. The brain panics in silence. It invents horror. What does that say about you? That when the line between sleeping and waking blurs, your brain defaults to fear. Lucid dreaming offers a twisted kind of agency. You become aware within the dream. You take control. But even then, the control is superficial. The dream world resists. Logic slips. Emotions spike. You realize you are awake inside a lie. And you wake feeling more disturbed, not empowered. Now think about the dreams you don't remember. Researchers estimate the average person has 3 to 5 dreams per night. That's over 100,000 dreams in a lifetime. The vast majority are lost, vanished. So, 100,000 experiences, thoughts, actions, identities, deaths, all erased. Where did they go? Who did you become in them? You don't know. You never will. And yet you trust your mind to be consistent. In dreams, time distorts. You can live for days in the span of minutes. You can be young, old, dead, reborn. The self bends. The laws of physics bend. And still, you believe the waking world is somehow more true, even though it is built from the same neurons, firing in the same meat. Both are hallucinations. One has consensus. That's all. Sleep also blurs the boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness. During NREM sleep, the brain clears out metabolic waste, a process called the glymphatic system. It's a kind of neural janitor scrubbing toxins from your mind. But what does that mean? That your mind accumulates poison while awake. That the act of thinking pollutes itself. And only by ceasing to be do you clean it. You must die to be whole again. Even dreams are not your own. Studies show that trauma survivors have recurring dream motifs. Falling, being chased, losing teeth. The brain replays suffering without permission. It is not therapy. It is torment. And it suggests this. You're not safe in sleep. Your memories follow you, twist themselves into symbols, mock you in the dark. And then there's the final sleep. Death is often described as eternal sleep. But that's comforting fiction. Sleep has cycles. Waking. Movement. Death does not. It is not rest. It is the absence of structure. You imagine death as peaceful because sleep feels peaceful. But that is projection. In truth, you've never experienced death. You can't. Experience ends before death begins. The mind cannot simulate nothingness. It can only circle it. But every night, you come close. You give up the illusion. You lie down, close your eyes, and disappear. And you trust you will return. You don't remember the moment you slip into unconsciousness. You can't. The transition cannot be witnessed. You fall, and the falling becomes silence. And yet you think of waking as a return, as a victory. But how can it be if you don't remember the war? So let me ask you, if sleep deletes the self, if dreams replace you with strangers, if each night your identity collapses and rebuilds, if consciousness can be paused and resumed like a program, what makes you believe that the you reading this is the same one who closed their eyes last night? 8. You are a story the brain tells itself. There is no self. There never was. Only a story, stitched from fragments, told in the dark. You say, I am me, but you cannot point to where you begin. Not in your skull, not in your heart, not in your memories. Every cell in your body has been replaced, every molecule recycled. You are a ship rebuilt plank by plank, but you insist the name remains. Who are you, if nothing of you remains? The illusion of the self is the brain's greatest trick, not to deceive others, but to survive itself. Cognitive science has spent decades peeling back the layers of identity. And what it finds again and again is this. The self is an afterthought. It is a construct retrofitted onto perception. Your brain integrates sensations, memories. 9. No one knows you exist. You move through the world convinced you are seen, known, understood. You assume others perceive you as you perceive yourself. Complex, continuous, real. But the truth is this. No one has ever met you. They've only met their version of you. And that version lives entirely in You've never heard a single sound. You believe the world is loud. Cars, voices, thunder, applause. You believe you've heard music, heard words, heard your name. But you haven't. Not once. You've never heard anything. Because sound is not something you receive. It's something your brain invents. Air does not carry sound. It carries pressure, vibrations, waves of compression and expansion moving through molecules. These vibrations hit your eardrum, which moves 3 tiny bones, the smallest in your body, called the ossicles. These bones rattle the fluid in your cochlea. Inside it, hair cells dance. They convert mechanical motion into electrical signals. That's where sound ends. The rest? Fabrication. Your brain interprets voltage. Not music, not voice. Voltage. It builds an internal model of what the world might be, based on the pattern of input. And then it fills in the blanks. It filters, it guesses, it imagines. You do not hear the world. You hear the brain's hallucination of the world. Proof? You hear things that aren't there all the time. Phantom phone vibrations. Your name whispered in white noise. The eerie hum in complete silence. Auditory pareidolia. Hearing words in static, songs in wind. Even the tinnitus ringing in your ears when no sound exists. These aren't errors. They're signs the brain can't tolerate silence. It fabricates sound to fill the void. And it lies in deeper ways, too. In 1999, Diana Deutsch discovered this speech-to-song illusion. If you repeat a spoken phrase enough, it begins to sound like music. The line between speaking and singing blurs, not in the sound itself, but in your brain's interpretation of it. Repetition reclassifies reality. So what else has repetition turned into truth? Even location is guessed. You think you know where a sound comes from, but your brain compares arrival time between 2 ears and guesses. It creates a 3D auditory scene from incomplete data. Blindfolded, you lose that precision. You can't tell front from back. You realize how fragile direction is. How simulated. The McGurk effect shows this in brutal clarity. Watch a video of a person saying BA, but dub over it with FA. You will hear FA. Your eyes change your ears. The visual input rewrites your auditory perception. You don't hear what's real. You hear what the brain finds consistent. And language? It's worse. Spoken words are not clean sounds. Every utterance is a blur of overlapping frequencies shaped by accents, emotions, stutters. Your brain segments the stream into words, but those boundaries don't exist in the signal. Babies hear undifferentiated noise. They learn to segment based on expectation. You don't hear what's said. You hear what you think was meant. Which brings us to voices. Do you remember the sound of someone you've lost? Replay it in your mind. But what are you replaying? There is no recording, no file, only a ghost simulation. Your memory is not audio. It is concept dressed in fake sound. And your own voice? The one you hear on recordings is not the one you know. Because when you speak, you hear bone conduction, vibrations through your skull. The voice you've heard your entire life. No one else has ever heard it. Your true voice is a stranger, and always was. Even silence is a lie. Anechoic chambers, rooms so quiet you hear your heartbeat, your blood. People panic. The absence of external sound turns the internal up. The brain cannot process stillness. It reaches for meaning, for rhythm, for comfort. In total silence, the mind screams. But here's the part you never think about. You don't even need ears to hear. People born deaf can hear through visual language. The auditory cortex rewires itself to process movement, emotion, even music through vibration. Cochlear implants bypass the ear entirely. They inject signals straight into the auditory nerve. The brain doesn't care how information arrives. It just needs a pattern to translate. So what then is hearing? A trick of the mind? A choreography of guesswork and hallucination? And if the voice in your head isn't real? If the voices you hear from others are reconstructions? If the world you trust to make noise has never made any at all? Then what makes you believe you've ever left your skull?